great. So welcome to Buddhist Dishes Tour. Especially warm welcome if it's your first time here, and I hope you had a good meditation next door and you weren't too squeezed in or roasting too hot. Yeah, so I don't normally have titles for the kind of talks that I do here now and then, but this time I do have a title. It's not that great, but never mind. I do have a title, and that is Why Bother with Buddhism? Yeah, it's obviously been a question on my mind. So, why bother? Yeah, or you could call it Why is Buddhism so hard? Yeah. I wrote something earlier in the week in the WhatsApp group, kind of talking about, or at least introducing some of the themes in this talk, and it's not an exhaustive list of why Buddhism's hard or good, as we'll see. Maybe they're not dissimilar. It's just some kind of food for thought, perhaps. Yeah, some sort of reflection. Yeah, and hopefully it won't be so long. I'd like to try and keep it fairly short, and then if you have any questions or ideas or whatever, we can have a look at that afterwards. Yeah. I mean, just to say, obviously, if something's hard and difficult, it doesn't mean it's bad, does it? I mean, we live in a kind of culture where obviously everything. It's not a bad thing to try and do. We're trying to make everything as easy and comfortable as possible, sort of natural, yeah. But obviously, things that are difficult can be really good as well, can't they? Like learning to play guitar, that's difficult, but that's good. Or learning to box or dance or paint or something. They're not easy things, yeah. So there you go, good. So why is Buddhism hard? Well, the first thing I thought, Buddhism's hard because you're trying to create new habits, yeah, new patterns, and that takes a vast amount of energy, actually. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to start, as we all know, to try and create a new habit is quite difficult. And you could say Buddhism, well, you could say, as the founder of this particular movement said, we are, in a way, a bundle of habits. Yeah, some of them not very good habits either, but we're generally a bundle of habits, and so we're trying to create new habits, and in a way trying to create a new self, yeah, a new person within that. So I just thought I'd fling out a few habits that we're trying to create that can be quite challenging, yeah. So the first one is meditating, yeah, meditating daily. The person I learned meditation from, who's actually a very good teacher, he said, in a way, people sometimes underestimate the power of that. Like learning to actually creating a daily practice of meditation, however crap you might think you're doing, actually is extraordinarily potent. Yeah, it's a daily practice, even of self-reflection and just reminding yourself what your higher kind of aspirations are. Yeah, so even if you think I'm just kind of fiddling around here, it's difficult. And it's kind of important, perhaps. Yeah. Another thing, not talking badly about people behind their backs. That's hard work, isn't it? It's so tasty. You're just like, oh, I can't wait to just put the boot in. Just like, no, I won't do that. That's hard work, yeah. So Buddhism is very keen on our speech. Yeah, it has a lot to say about that whole area of our being, in a way. Yeah, it's a very important part of Buddhism, our speech. You could say the opposite's hard as well, sometimes learning to rejoice in people. Yeah, that's another habit to develop. It can be done. You can find yourself naturally rejoicing in people more. Yeah, just naturally. They're not even there, and you say something nice about them. It just feels good. Yeah, yeah. So rejoicing in people. Yeah, obviously looking after your health without becoming obsessive. That's not so easy. I think one of the most difficult things why Buddhism is hard is because in a certain sense it's a continual kind of questioning your assumptions about what you think is going on, yeah, and your views. And in Buddhism, in a sense, everything you think you know about the world at this point in your life is provisional, yeah, according to the Buddha. But we don't treat it like it's provisional generally. We generally think what we think right now is kind of true. And it sort of is for us in this moment, but it's not according to the Buddha. Yeah. In fact, we're seriously deluded. Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard to kind of continually question what you think is actually going on. Yeah. Which is why friendship is important. obviously. Well, within Buddhism, friendship is very important because it's not easy to feel kind of a bit unconfident and what do I really think, to have that kind of growth happening. You need supportive conditions, according to the Buddha at least, yeah? So that's one thing. Not eating cheeseburgers is more of a personal example, but that was actually, I won't say that was very difficult for me. But it's a kind of ethical issue, isn't it? So I like cheeseburgers, and I'm a natural carnivore, but I don't do it. So there you go. Yeah. So Buddhism's hard because you're trying to create a new person. Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty grand, but that's basically what it is. Or go beyond a person anyway. So habits, that's the first thing, yeah? The second thing is hard. Buddhism is hard because, it's this whole business of karma, yeah? So karma just means action, yeah? You're taking action, yeah? So Buddhism is something active. And it's difficult because you're planting seeds all the time, yeah? So you plant seeds, and according to, if you look for yourself, I think it's true, you plant seeds and they have a fruit, yeah? But it's difficult because not only are you planting seeds, in this case good seeds, you're simultaneously experiencing the fruit from past seeds, which might not have been so good, yeah? Does that make sense? Kind of, yeah? So it can be very difficult because there's a period when you start practicing Buddhism where apparently you're doing all the right things, yeah? You're trying to be kind to people, you're trying not to talk about people behind their back, trying to be generous, all this stuff, and you feel terrible, yeah? Or something weird's happening in your life, you've got some weird dispute with somebody, and you start thinking, what's the point? What is the point of me trying to be a good person and actually feel rubbish? But in a way, there's a kind of crossover period in Buddhism, which is quite difficult, yeah? You decided you want to be, let me just frame it like that, a good person, yeah? You decided you want to cultivate all these qualities, and yet, you don't feel so good, yeah? I can speak from experience, that's kind of just how it works. But I think, in a way, one just has to know that it's a process, yeah? And you're in the middle of a process where you are still experiencing the fruits of past karma, past actions, yeah? You've got to accept that. Or you just get reactive again. You just say, why bother, Buddhism's rubbish, yeah? Doesn't make any difference, I'm still getting into trouble with things and still in a negative mental state. But what happens is you develop a momentum practicing, yeah? So the more skillful action you do, over time, you start experiencing the fruit of that. So it's the long game. Buddhism is the long game, which is why it's difficult. It's not a quick fix, yeah? So that can be difficult. So does anyone have any idea how you go through that process? What's helpful? If you're in the process of trying to change things in your life and you're not quite experiencing the fruits of all your good deeds, to call it like that, what's helpful in that process?
Doing it together.
Sorry?
Doing it together.
Bingo, that's what I wrote as well. Good. Yeah, basically, you have something like this. You have friendship, yeah, a community of people that you can communicate with this about, and also people, for example, that have been practicing for a lot longer than yourself. Yeah, I would never be able to carry on if I hadn't had people that have been practicing for 40 years longer than me, 20 years, whatever it is, to just say it's fine, it's normal. Yeah, this will happen and that will happen. You're like, all right. And if you trust them, you carry on, yeah? So a main thing is to do with friendship, basically, yeah? It's the same for anything else in life, isn't it? But it's basically in order to carry on with that process, you need to be in you need to have supportive conditions, yeah? Another thing is you can ask yourself what the alternative is, yeah? It's always good. You can say to yourself, all right, I've had enough of this. It's such hard work trying to be nice to people, and trying to be kind and generous, and I'm not getting any rewards. I'm just going to do my own thing. Yeah, and then see what happens. Yeah? So it's fairly clear, according to the Buddha, you're going to have a miserable life. But he says test it for yourself. If you don't believe him, you try and just carry on being extremely selfish. You think, I don't want to bother with all this stuff. It's not fun in the end. Yeah. So that's one thing. So anyway. Well, that kind of leads on to the second thing that's hard. The second thing that's difficult in Buddhism is friendship, yeah? Because Buddhism places a real emphasis on real friendship, which isn't just a trivial issue in Buddhism, it's a huge thing. It's like actually getting to know somebody and to be friends with them, and even a number of different people in Buddhism is extremely difficult. And one of those reasons is there's no areas that's off limits, yeah? So normally in a lot of friendships, well, at least in other friendships, you have certain areas in your life where you just kind of like, I'm not going there, yeah? I'll present this side of myself to you, and we can both present ourselves to each other. And maybe we get on with each other for a few years, but then you get this thing, don't you, sometimes where you've been friends with someone for, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And it's a bit like, well, there's a teacher called Maitreya Bandhu, he goes into this very well, but in a way, you end up bored. You're walking around the park, you think, God, we've had this conversation, I don't know how many times, it's really boring, yeah? And we're friends. And then at that point, you have to take a risk and just say, do you know what? This is kind of boring, and what I would like to know about this about you or that about you, and actually learn about each other. And it's very challenging, yeah? But in a way, it's the juice. You could say in some respects, it's the juice of the spiritual life. It's like your friendships is what will invigorate you, and that kind of communication, although it's very difficult, it's actually very enlivening, yeah? It kind of, you learn about yourself. Yeah, and I mean, there's obvious reasons we want to keep parts of ourselves hidden, yeah, because in a way, we might feel like we become weak, or we, you know, it's not nice being, you have to trust people as well, like you might feel confused, yeah, you might even feel deluded, you think, what am I doing? And you don't want to expose that to people because it's a sensitive area, isn't it? So we keep things off the books in a way, but super important. Yeah, one thing I was thinking is difficult with this whole area of friendship is this whole area of reactivity, yeah? Because it's very easy to get spiky with people, isn't it? I know people will like poke into me a bit and be like, oh, you do this sometimes, and I'll be like, you know, this is kind of like, all the shield comes up, and then you're just like, oh, yeah, you're right. You know? But reactivity is huge, yeah, especially in this sangha like this. It's kind of reactivity plays a very, very big part in all this, yeah. Because in a way, real harmony is challenging, isn't it? Real harmony with people isn't just, I agree, you agree, oh, I like this, you like this as well, thumbs up. You actually get to know each other, and in a way, you kind of end up rubbing off those spiky edges, yeah? Don't know what happens then. Get smooth? I don't know, it doesn't matter. But, yeah, it requires courage, yeah? I don't know, in a way, it's part of growing up, isn't it? I think of myself, like, I think when you're a kid, you're pretty reactive, you know, you don't get the toys you want, and you sort of lose it, don't you? Kind of, or someone pushes you in the playground and you do something terrible. It's the same with us, you know, someone says something like, have you thought about this? And you're like, the outrage, you know, so it's just worth thinking about that. Which leads on to the fourth thing, fully grown human beings like us, we think we're finished products, don't we? We think we're like, yeah, this is me, done school, done growing up, I know what's what, this is my opinions, I've got all these big opinions about everything, and that's your opinions, and I'm a finished product, yeah? So that's hard, because all that gets challenged, yeah, a bit like the first thing. Not sure what one does about that. I think some people are naturally receptive to something beyond, I don't know, beyond who they think they are, what they are. But it's a challenge, yeah? So, yeah, we're grown up, but we're definitely not finished. Well, I'm not finished. And in a way, I think that's one of the liberating things about Buddhism, or the Buddha. It's like he holds up a vision of what's possible, yeah? He kind of basically says we're in the kind of the beginning of something, yeah? Even what we would aspire to is the peak, perhaps, in our culture, being a healthy, happy human being, yeah? Which is pretty amazing to get to that point. The Buddha says that is literally just the beginning, yeah? Once you're at that point of being a healthy, happy human being, there's a whole exploration of consciousness and expansion of consciousness, which is a lot bigger than that, yeah? It doesn't really sit with our secular kind of materialist, nihilist culture, but that's what Buddhism's saying, yeah? It's all the same thing, isn't it? Anyway, so this leads on to number 5. Buddhism is hard because it really means committing to total transformation, yeah? bit like the previous thing, that's difficult because it means you'll end up getting humiliated and embarrassed along the way. Yeah, I mean, maybe you're making a commitment to love, universal love. Yeah, that's the goal, universal love. Yeah, and you realise you're full of hate. Yeah, and even if you try and repress it, it doesn't work. You're just like, oh God, this is really horrible. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if those of you that have been on retreats, maybe you can relate, but there is an experience, or at least I've had the experience, where I've been on an amazing retreat, yeah, and I've been in all these higher states of consciousness, and I think, yeah, I'm making it, yeah, I'm like, there's the Buddha, there's me, I'm coming, yeah, I'm on the way, yeah, nice, I'll just keep up with this pace of meditation, and like, yeah. And then the retreat ends, you're like, just hold it down, it's all right, don't stress, yeah, everything's changing, conditions change, and you get to the train station, you're just like, oh God, who are these people? Anyway, it's fine. Like, and then you get on the train, and there's some really annoying teenager play some like really loud music on their phone next to your head, screaming at their mums, and you're just like, oh, I hate everyone, yeah? And you're just like, oh no, I've blown it, and like, you just lose faith, the whole thing collapses, yeah, you feel stupid and angry, then you feel angry that you've got angry because you're supposed to be not getting angry. Hard work, yeah, hard work. So in a way, I think having that commitment to your own total transformation, or having an actual ideal in life, which I can't really imagine a life without it personally, but having that will always be a challenge, because then you feel like, oh boy, I could do better than that. Yeah, but it's in a way, that's it. In a way, it's learning to make mistakes, obviously, isn't it? It's like normal stuff. We all make mistakes. It's also learning how to apologize quickly. I think, personally speaking, that's one of the best things I generally do now, I've learned to do, is if I've done something off key with somebody, it's just apologize as quickly as you can, yeah? Get over yourself, just apologize, clears the decks, and you can carry on, yeah? It's not easy to learn how to do that, but it is doable, yeah? I think I've managed to do this by being around people that are a lot more experienced than me and that I've looked up to, and watched them make a complete catastrophe of something, and then they've apologized more or less instantaneously. Yeah, they've done something, and you think, oh my God, you're supposed to be, I thought you were like some next level teacher, and you've done something that's actually pretty nasty, but they'll apologize, yeah, immediately. I'm like, all right, that's how it works. And then you see the kind of, I don't know, you kind of clean yourself up that way, yeah. So in a way, it's difficult because one needs to somehow become robust enough to practice Buddhism. Yeah, you need to become robust enough emotionally to allow yourself to feel humiliated now and then by your own idiocy. Yeah, without losing confidence in yourself. It's quite a balance. Yeah, to kind of be confident, robust, and at the same time know that you're a bit of a plonker sometimes, and just be all right with that. It's like, it's okay. Yeah, plonker's like a stupid person. Yeah. Yeah. So that's not so easy, which sort of leads up to number 6. I don't know why I put these numbers. It's basically just like a talk where there's a progression, but I put numbers, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, so number 6, it's difficult because in a way you have to bring the whole of yourself into this, yeah, into your practice. It's a bit like the previous thing. It's no good being a smiley Buddhist here and being like, oh, Namo Buddhaya, like nice Buddhist, and then you go out and like, you're kind of horrible to people, or like, I don't know what we all get up to, yeah? So I guess it means sort of discovering yourself, and also the parts you don't like about yourself, yeah? There's lots of things I really dislike about myself, yeah? I dislike my own hatred, yeah? I dislike my kind of jealousy. I wouldn't say I'm bitter, I don't experience bitterness so much anymore, but I used to find that really ugly and unpleasant to know that it was in me, yeah? But in a way, you have to kind of have that, it has to be available, yeah? Petty rivalry, horrible, yeah? Violent fantasies, no, they're bad. All the dark sex stuff, you know? Craving, yeah, for security. Yeah, craving for kind of security and comfort at the expense of like everyone else perhaps, and also your own freedom and love, yeah? So that's difficult because you've got to bring a lot of yourself, a lot more of yourself online, yeah? Sangharakshita, again, who founded this particular movement, he said we're a risen ape and fallen angel, yeah? And well, it leads to we could maybe talk about that later. But even this whole business of being a fallen angel it's difficult because it's to do with your own potential. Yeah, you do have potential to be something else. Anyway, we're animals, aren't we, basically? And we've just sort of got ourselves out of a swamp, apparently. And that's not easy to kind of come to terms with that, because we want to be nice people, but we're kind of swamp creatures as well, aren't we? And that's what I love in a certain sense about Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah, they don't shy away from that. You look at they've somehow managed to transform it's the pagan culture, isn't it? Yeah, they've managed to transform all that energy and violence and sex. All their images, you've got these wrathful deities, they look like they're going to destroy something, yeah, or their sexual imagery. They've transformed all that energy into the service of Buddhism, yeah? You've got these bull-headed creatures, you've got these darkinis, they're like ripping their guts out and chopping heads off, and you go, oh, that's a bit much, but I think it's like all that darkness, doesn't indicate a sick mind. Yeah, I think a lot of us kind of shy away from that because we think there's something wrong with me. When you look at a culture like Tibetan Buddhism, it's not saying there's nothing wrong with that. It just needs to be transformed. Yeah. I mean, as an interesting aside, I remember hearing I can't remember who it was actually, but there was when I say it's to do with literalism, yeah? You need to, in a way, one needs to engage with these things symbolically, yeah? Because otherwise it sort of gets literalized. I can't remember his name. It might be someone called Eli Wiesel, but there was a kind of Holocaust survivor that was talking about, he was saying his theory was a lot of the horrors in the last century, yeah, were to do with literalism, that we'd kind of banished anything, what you might call, we'd taken anything spiritual or symbolic to be child's play, but it's still a huge part of our psyche, and therefore it had to get expressed literally because we need to engage with it. It's just an idea. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I think he's a very interesting character, apparently. But I just thought it was interesting that if you're not engaged with your own, you could call darkness, at least symbolically, it might start playing out in weird ways, yeah? Speaking personally, it was incredibly important because I think I had a kind of a block to talking about my own kind of evil, or not even evil, my own kind of darkness with people, yeah? And I remember I had the chap who got me into Buddhism, his name's Kavla. He kind of befriended me, took me on as a friend, yeah. And we were going for a walk in the park, and I can't even remember what it was. It was some dodgy sexual dream I had, yeah, probably to do with my mother or something. Anyway, it was a really weird dream, yeah. And I kind of was like, and I told him, and he was like, oh yeah. No, I had this dream, yeah, a week ago where I bit this baby's head off and I was drinking his blood. And like this police car with blacked out windows was circling me, and we were both in the field, and I was like, yes, we're friends. I mean, you can say anything, it's fine. Yeah, nothing's off limits. And that really helped to free my energy up. I was just like, all right, I'm not sick, I'm just a human. Humans are very strange, aren't they? Yeah, so that can be quite difficult. Another thing that's hard perhaps is actually getting a glimpse of your own potential. Yeah, that's incredibly threatening generally because it challenges the whole of your life, to put it in shortened. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people experience that when they start practicing. They like people do say it should come with a health warning in a way. You kind of think, oh, all these nice Buddhists, hopefully have a cup of tea, meditate a bit. But then you get more into it, and then maybe you go on a retreat and something opens, and you're just like, there's something a lot more going on, yeah? And it's not a fantasy, it wasn't a little glitch or a little momentary, it shows you something that kind of categorically and undeniably is what you might call your potential, and that leaves you with a big problem, yeah? It kind of threatens everything you built up in your life. And it's difficult, maybe it's career, maybe you end up having you have problems with your family. Yeah, you can have these deep tensions, yeah, they can kind of build up. So that's actually quite challenging, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't honour what you've experienced or what you're seeing, that will cause an even bigger split, and that's certainly happened. I've seen it happen to a few people where the challenge has been too much, they've left, and then they've gone, actually I should have paid heed to that. And they come back 20 years later, kind of like, oh, I'm back, you know. Yeah, so that's actually quite challenging, having a vision. Which leads on to number 8. Buddhism's hard in a way because other people will be fine with you practicing Buddhism as long as it's a hobby. Yeah? As long as it's a hobby, there's no problem. Yeah? If it starts to become serious for you, then I think other people get a bit annoyed. Yeah? Well, yeah, it's very uncomfortable for a number of reasons. One, they think you're kind of, well, one, they can think that you're judging them, now you're all religious, yeah? Like, oh, you know, people say crazy stuff like, yeah, well, my meditation is blah, 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 and it's just like, hang on, bro, I haven't said anything. I'm just sitting here. But then you suddenly start representing some kind of thing that people react to, yeah? So, I think the thing is, though, although it's hard, and people probably will be a bit annoyed about that, or a bit weird, over time, the only way they come to accept that you actually are serious about this is by your example, yeah? So in a way, if anything, you're kinder to them, you're more interested in them, you're less kind of reactive and grumpy, and they're just like, oh, maybe it's all right. You know, they like the fact that you're doing it, yeah? But it's a challenge, it's a real challenge, yeah? All right, nearly there, that's good. So number 9, it's hard because in Buddhism, you're taking love and friendship as your ideal, yeah? Similar to the other thing, but I don't know, I just thought it's kind of, I just wanted to bring it up as a specific thing, yeah? It's not just a generalized ideal, you've got kind of friendship and love in the middle of it. And that means, again, you won't feel so good when you fail at that, yeah? But I was thinking that's a good thing. It's good that you don't feel good when you fail at loving people. It's not like, oh, be kind to yourself. No, it's good, it's super positive, yeah? I was remembering an experience like a very long time ago, well, not very long, but when I started practicing, yeah? I remember I was in London, and I was walking along the street, and I was in my early 20s, and this guy walked past me, and I just got this impulse to punch him, yeah? And like, we had this kind of young man's kind of thing, yeah? And I went back to my friend, he was a real street dude, yeah? So I wasn't expecting much from him. And I said to him, like, yeah, oh God, you know, I had this impulse to hit this guy, and I didn't, but what's wrong with me? And he totally flipped it. He just said, listen, isn't that amazing that you've got this impulse not to attack this guy, and the fact that this impulse arose in you upsets you? I was like, wow, yeah, that's true. It's like a positive. Like, I actually felt really, it kind of flipped things. Like, it's okay to not feel good when you have those impulses, in a way. Never mind. Yeah, it kind of relates to a retreat that I was on, where I think it was the first longish retreat that I was on, and we were supposed to be cultivating basically love and compassion for like 2 weeks, yeah? So every day you're sitting there and you're meditating for, I don't know how long, it was like 7 hours a day, yeah, relentless, cultivating compassion, love, and you're just like, oh, this is hard work, it's really hard work, you know? It's just like you get bored, you get fidgety, I don't care about them, why am I doing this? And like after a couple of days, I was in the dining hall, and there was this guy in front of me, and I didn't even want to look at him, because I kind of looked up and I was like, oh God, look at his stupid haircut. And I was just like, it's horrible. I was supposed to be on a retreat about love, and I'm like criticizing this guy's hair, yeah? And it wouldn't stop, and it was so horrible, yeah? And that went on, and but see, the kind of winning part of this whole thing is at the end of the retreat, I won't lie and say it was the same guy, but it may as well have been. I was in the dining hall again, and it was just like, it was such a relief, because I genuinely had no kind of ill will towards people. It was just like a genuine, I thought, oh yeah, that's like, that was worth the effort, the relief that comes with not having to wrestle with your little petty mind. It's worth it. It's worth all the effort. It's just amazing, you know, just to not have to be jumping on top of yourself, even if you're doing it subconsciously, like you don't even know you're doing it, you are sort of kind of getting on top of things to try and, you don't want to let things out, but to have that sense of genuine love for somebody that you don't even know, it's like bliss. It's amazing, yeah? So, yeah. Oh, good. Last one. Maybe it's obvious, but meditation can be hard here. So you go on a long retreat, your legs hurt, yeah? You're fine for the first day. Second day, your legs are killing you, or third day, and you're just like, oh my God, that's actually quite hard, yeah? And you kind of override your mood. Yeah, you can figure out different ways to sit, but you override your mood and you just do it, yeah? And it can be hard because doubt can kick in, yeah? You can think, oh, I can't meditate very well. Or you can have the flip side. You can start thinking, because you're a good meditator, you're very advanced, yeah? Which is not necessarily true, yeah? It can be true and it cannot be true. And you can also be a terrible meditator and not be very advanced, but also be advanced, yeah? So it can be quite confusing sometimes. Yeah, just the hard thing, like again, I was on a retreat over winter, and I got really sick. I got a throat infection more or less immediately, and then I got fever, and then I thought I had COVID, and more or less 70% of the retreat was the same, yeah? So everyone was sick, and like, it's silent retreat, and everyone's coughing, and just blowing their nose, and like, people don't know, I don't know what people think they were doing, it was just mad, yeah? It was like full-on surround sound. But everyone came to everything, yeah? I don't know why. It was maybe it was the nature of the retreat. It was kind of about death and about rebirth, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, yeah? And it was like everybody just turned up to everything, even though they were sick, yeah? To a meditation retreat. Now, what I would normally have done was just go and lie in my bed and watch some garbage on YouTube, yeah? Turn my brain off and let the body do what it needs to do. But for some reason, I came along. And I have to say, the whole retreat, more or less the whole retreat, in terms of the meditation itself, was just unpleasant. It was 2 weeks of unpleasant sensations, bodily sensations, but I worked, yeah? I really, really worked. And the interesting thing was, it wasn't just for me, is that off the cushion and just walking around the place, I was completely fine. I was in that super positive mental state, friendly, and so was more or less everyone else. And I found that really interesting, yeah? So, although the meditation was incredibly difficult, that for me was an example of karma, yeah? You do an action, maybe it's not so pleasant at the time, but the result is extraordinary, yeah? So, yeah, meditation can actually be hard, but obviously it can also be blissful, but this is about why Buddhism's hard, so we'll just leave it there. Good, I'll leave it there. We've got about 10 minutes, if anybody's got any questions or anything. Or not.